It's Phil Steele Friday, everyone. You are in the gun. We're going to get Phil's thoughts on some of the best games around college football, even in a weaker slate, but we'll still get his picks. I know he's got some good plays out there on the board. We'll get his thoughts here in just a minute. You are in the gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With special guest, Phil Steele.
Author of the College Football Bible.
You can see things before they happen.
Well, I definitely like West Virginia's offensive line.
All you got to do is bet on the winner and you'll never lose.
I like the Mountaineers to win this one.
Taylor, touchdown!
To me, the key matchup here is that West Virginia run game. Hey, a real pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on the In the Gun podcast.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 196. I'm Skylar Callahan. That is Jed Drenning, and we are going to be talking to Phil Steele here momentarily. It's going to be an interesting week. West Virginia heading out to Stillwater, trying to pick up a big second win in Big 12 play before returning home for a couple of bigger games, too, against Iowa State and Kansas State, two teams currently ranked in the top 25. But we'll get Phil's thoughts on the Mountaineers, along with a few other games in the Big 12 and top 25. But first, a shout-out to BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Go to BetOnline to place your bets where the game starts. And, Jed, where we start – actually, where will we start?
You know, it's not quite a separation Saturday in the Big 12, but it's getting there. I mean, you're getting to the point where it's very interesting to see what you learn about each of these teams because there's such a log jam almost throughout this entire league. So each of these games, I mean, we'll get into it with Phil, but each of these games for different reasons have me very curious. But as you talked about, there's not a lot of marquee games in the top 25, but I do think there's enough in the Big 12 to make this very appealing. I mean, I'm curious about a lot of these things. I'm looking at that. We're going to ask Bill, but yeah, some of these teams have shown flashes, and now you get to kind of match up a couple of these teams that have shown flashes against one another and see kind of what unfolds. But I think it's interesting. It's an interesting slate in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 has been kind of crazy. I mean, the fact that we saw last weekend BYU, they're now moving to 5-0. Utah, who I think was everyone's favorite, including mine, they've been kind of struggling offensively without Cam Rising, and they go down to Arizona, who hasn't looked great yet, but they found a way to get a win. Kansas State, they lose to BYU on the road, but then they bounce back and beat Oklahoma State handily. This league just feels wide open right now, and this is exactly what I've tried to tell fans. Like, yes, it doesn't look great that you're sitting here at 2-2, but you're 1-0 in league play, and you have a chance to go to 2-0 with two home games coming up. I mean, if you just try, and I know it's really hard, but if you just try to erase what happened in Pittsburgh, you got to feel okay about yourself because you had a chance to win that game. If that game ends differently, everyone's feelings about this team right now, I think, are completely different. But you still got to like where you are. You're in a great position. You control your own destiny. So I don't see why there's any reason to panic, at least as of right now.
And, you know, some of the interesting storylines, BYU has already hit the over with their wins.
Yeah.
And you talk about a team that must be enjoying their bye week. Can you imagine
Seriously.
being the BYU Cougars right now, sitting at home, healing up at 5-0? And here's my gripe. How is Arizona not ranked? Their only loss is on the road against a ranked team. And
Yeah.
they just went into Salt Lake City, which is a very tough chore, and knocked off a highly ranked Utah team. So Arizona's sitting there at 3-1. How are they not ranked? That's
Yeah.
kind of upsetting, but yeah, a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah. It's a deep league, as we all knew. There's a lot of parity. Neil's talked about it pretty much every week, how just about anybody in the Big 12 can beat anybody. So that's a big
TCU.
– yeah,
TCU had
TCU.
all these early season struggles. Their defense couldn't stop anybody. They go up into Kansas and win a tough game in Lawrence, and now they're sitting at home at 3-2, looking to go 4-2, hosting Houston.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly things can turn.
in Kansas. I mean, they've lost all these close games. I mean, they're sitting at 1-4. No, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I think most people would thought four losses for them would kind of be for the season a little bit of a disappointment. But I have a feeling they're going to get things turned around here pretty quickly. I picked them to win this week. I don't. Lance Leipold is such a good football coach. He's not going to let this thing fall apart. I don't see them returning to the Kansas that we all kind of knew when we came into the league over a little over a decade ago. They're going to get things figured out. But before we get to Phil, a couple of thank yous to our friends at Toothman Ford, where we all know cars cost less in Grafton. They do great work with the Mountaineers and have supported this show for quite some time now. And also to Fortis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Be sure to visit fortis.us.com. Hang tight. On the other side, we'll have Phil Steele to get his thoughts on a couple top 25 games, but mainly the Big 12 slate and that matchup between the Mountaineers and the Cowboys.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun with Phil Steele. It is time to talk a little bit of top 25 and mainly about the Big 12 this week, and then obviously West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Phil, welcome back to the show, and feel free to plug anything you got for us this week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, up right now, if you go to philsteele.com, is the Phil Steele Plus Tour. The tour has done quite well, 41 and 26 over the last 13 weeks. You get 5 selections. You get 8 quick hitters. The quick hitters had another winning week last week, and even an NFL play. It's all free, and it comes with complete reasoning. Just go take the Phil Steele Plus Tour right now at philsteele.com. Click on the tour, and it's on the YouTube channel.
There you have it. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off here in the top 25. The only top 25 matchup is in the SEC. That is Missouri at Texas A&M. Missouri had to escape Vanderbilt their last time out in a double overtime game. A couple of weeks ago, Texas A&M had a little bit of trouble with Bowling Green. It's two teams that just keep finding ways to win. But who do you see having the edge here in this game between Mizzou and A&M?
Yeah, and last week A&M was outgained by Arkansas by 82 yards, but managed to come out with the win. And they're a 4-1 this year after that loss to Notre Dame. Their most impressive win, of course, going into the Swamp and beating Florida 33-20. And with Missouri, I mean, they have the lightest SEC schedule to begin with and a cake non-conference schedule as well. So they're 4-0, but we really don't know a lot about Missouri. They do have Luther Burden. They do have Mookie Cooper and Theo Weiss at the receivers. So one of the better receiving corps in the country. Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll, a couple of transfer running backs, are doing well. And, of course, Brady Cook hitting 68% with a 4-1 ratio. But when I talked to Mike Elko, he said this might be his best defense he's had, and they are holding opponents to 85 yards per game below their season average. Missouri, of course, lost their defense coordinator in the offseason. Their defense has been playing well, but, of course, they haven't really played anybody. Boston College, the toughest opponent. I got to go with the home field edge here. It's in College Station. I'm going to take the Aggies to come out of this one with the win.
And Phil, in a week that's pretty light in terms of top 25 matchups, I thought another one that was at least worth discussing. When you look at Clemson's trip to Tallahassee, just because of the history of that rivalry. I thought it was worth bringing up with what's going on. It's such a stark difference between the rebound that Clemson has experienced since that opening day loss to Georgia. I know you've been high on them. Their offense is really coming, and the incredible struggles that you're seeing Florida State struggle through. What do you see playing out with Clemson as a heavy favorite on the road at Florida State? Is this as obvious as it seems?
Yeah, who would have thought at the start of the year that Clemson would be a 2 touchdown favorite at Florida State? I mean, I think the preseason line on this had Florida State as the slight favorite in the game. But when you look at Clemson, the key has been since that Georgia loss, they brought in the freshman wide receivers like Bryant Wesco, and they've been dangerous at the receiving core. Cade Klubnik has looked like the quarterback you thought he would when he came out of high school. The offensive line's playing well. Defensively, I was surprised they gave up 230 yards to Stanford in the first half last week, but they shut them down in the second half, played a lot better. But this is a Clemson team on a roll. And keep in mind, last year's game, while Clemson lost, they did not trail by a single second in the entire game. And they gave up a fumble return for a touchdown when they were up by 7, driving for another score. They had a 25-16 first down edge, a 429 to 311 yard edge. If there's ever a team that's playing with legitimate revenge, it's Clemson. They should have won last year's game and didn't. And with Florida State, they just can't get out of their own way. And while DJU, it's not all DJU. I mean, his offensive line's not playing as well as expected. You look at the fact that the receiving core is dropping a lot of passes. One of the interceptions last week bounced right off the receiver's chest and got intercepted. But DJU's not playing here. They go to Brock Glenn, and Brock Glenn's got 4 passes under his belt this year. He hasn't completed one of them. And there's a reason that DJU wasn't being taken out of the games. I think it's because they don't really have that capable backup. So I just think Clemson's playing better, should be able to go on the road and get the win, and they're playing with revenge. I'm taking Clemson minus the points there.
Hopping over into the Big 12, we're going to start here with Houston traveling to TCU. And TCU quietly kind of sitting here at 3-2 with a chance to get to 4-2 against one of the weaker teams in the Big 12. Houston has just really struggled to score the ball here in year one under Willie Fritz. They've got shut out in back-to-back games. If you remove the Rice game, they've only scored 12 total points. Actually, 12 total points against Power 4 opponents so far this year in 3 games. Houston just doesn't have enough offense, I don't think, to keep up in this game. So I guess the better question here is, Phil, do you just lay the points with TCU or do you just stay off of it completely?
I do like the Frogs in this one. And, you go back to the first game of the season for Houston when they played UNLV. UNLV completely dominated them the entire game, and Houston's only score came on a 90-yard, 12-play drive for a touchdown with a minute left in the game against UNLV's backup. So that could easily be 3 shutouts in 5 games heading into this one. And TCU's got to be a hungry team right now. And they let that SMU game get away from them. They had 3 defensive or special teams touchdowns. The UCF game, remember, they led that thing big and then gave up a late score. So I think they will step on throats from here on out. They don't want to give up a game like UCF. So I'm going to say TCU's offense puts the points on the board. And as you correctly mentioned, Houston's offense has been struggling, only 286 yards per game. I like the Frogs in this one.
Another team whose record doesn't necessarily seem to reflect what they've looked like this year, the Baylor Bears. Dave Aranda has had them in every football game, but they stand at 2-3. They went to Salt Lake City, played Utah a lot tougher than people expected. We all remember the crazy nature of the loss in Boulder to the Buffaloes, the crazy nature of the loss at home to BYU, and yet here they are, 2-3, and now they have to go under the lights at Jack Trice Stadium to face probably the toughest defense or one of the toughest defenses in the Big 12, and an offense that's playing really efficient football in Iowa State. What do you see playing out here?
Yeah, and when I look at Iowa State, I look at a team that I think has a great chance of being in the Big 12 title game this year. When I went over the team with Coach Campbell, going over every position, almost every position, he would say, Phil, this is the deepest, or this is the best, or this is the most talented group we've had since I've been here. And he's been there quite some time. This is ninth season. So this is a very talented Iowa State team. They really impressed me with their road win at Iowa. Iowa's a really good team this year. They're going to win 9 or 10 games and be a playoff contender. I see them with 2 losses, and maybe that's about it. So you look at Iowa State, they're loaded. Dave Aranda, just tough luck this year. He's taken over calling the defenses. Defense is doing well. They're holding opponents 36 yards below their season average. I like what I'm seeing out of Sawyer Robertson the last couple of weeks. He's got a nice 6-2 ratio. Spread-wise, I find it tough. I like Iowa State to win the game, but I don't know about covering the high spread that they have. So I'm staying away from this one spread-wise. I'm going to call for Iowa State to get yet another win and move to 5-0 at home.
UCF had a chance to really kind of cement themselves in the Big 12 race last week. Obviously, it's a slight step back. That one got away from them against Colorado. They had some chances early in that game, Phil, I thought, to kind of take advantage and go up and maybe put a little bit of pressure on Colorado, but it didn't end up going that way. Now they go to the Swamp in a game that Florida really, really needs. They've got 5 of their next 6 games are against top 25 opponents, so there's not very many games where the Gators are going to be favored. This is probably going to be a game that they feel like they need to have. So is this a good spot for Florida to pick up another win, or does UCF bounce back?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I like Florida in a desperate situation. They're off a bye. And in their last game, they played really well against Mississippi State, put up 503 yards. Graham Mertz is playing well. DJ Lagway's playing well. And I think you're going to see a Florida team just really out. And keep in mind, Florida's the underdog here. They're a 2.5-point dog. So I think that's another motivation on their part. Plus, UCF, as you mentioned, it's a game where last week I thought I was taking UCF minus the points against Colorado, and very disappointed in the performance coming out there and getting beat up 48-21. I know, as you mentioned at the start of the game, if they would have taken care of some things, would have been closer. But I think it's a good situation for Florida at home. UCF has bigger fish to fry in the Big 12. I like the Gators plus the points here to pull the upset.
Bill, I don't know what list will be shorter. If you asked people before the season started how many people thought Kansas would be 1-4, or how many people thought Arizona State will be 3-1. But here we are with the Jayhawks heading out to Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham in year 2 is doing a great job. He's got that defense playing some nasty football. They've got a run game going. The last thing Kansas needed was to lose that TCU game at home last week. Now all the Wolves are out. What do you see playing out with a desperate Kansas team at 1-4 on the road against a dangerous Arizona State team as a slight favorite?
Yeah, and you got to love that. The big thing with Arizona State this year is the offensive line. Last year they had like 5 offensive linemen available for a game, and now they've got a deeper offensive line, and it's showing. They're averaging 4.4 yards per carry. They've only given up 7 sacks this year, and the offense putting up 33 points per game. So with an offensive line, Scadaboo has been able to look like Cam Scadaboo should. Sam Leavitt's been playing solid, and defensively, as you mentioned, they're holding opponents to 131 yards per game below their season average. That's number 11 in the country. The big thing is Jalen Daniels. You know, everybody had huge expectations for Jalen Daniels, but this year, 5 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, and he only has 117 yards rushing. Now, I like Neal and high shot running back. I think it's a very dangerous and underrated duo. And Kansas has had a lot of close losses, the Illinois, the UNLV, the West Virginia. But right now, going on the road into the desert, I got to like Arizona State to come out of here with the win.
Well, if you're on the East Coast like us and you like offense, take a nap at some point during Saturday afternoon, because you'll want to stay up for this one between Texas Tech and Arizona, which doesn't kick off until 11 p.m. Eastern time. But Texas Tech, they're a team that I think is kind of somewhat flying under the radar. I know their record may be a little inflated because they probably played 2 of the weaker teams in the Big 12, but they are putting up offense. Baron Morton's moving the football. He's putting up gaudy numbers. This is going to be a lot of fun between Tech and Arizona. Who do you think comes out on top here?
Yeah, and Cincinnati, I thought last week, I like the Bearcats. I think they're an underrated team. They put up 555 yards. They were in control a couple times in that game, ended up losing, but they had a 29-21 first down advantage. So I think Texas Tech was fortunate to come out of there with the win. But do keep in mind, their only loss this year was when Taj Brooks was out versus Washington State. Taj Brooks having a heck of a year, 551 yards rushing. And I like your breakdown of the game coming in. It should be a high-scoring shootout. These are two very high-scoring offenses. Fafita and Tatori McMillan are a dangerous combination. And then you add in a guy like Quayle Conley at running back. This is an Arizona offense that can put points on the board. They just took on two really good defenses in Kansas State and Utah. Now they're taking on a manageable defense. So I think it will be a high-scoring game. I like Arizona to win this one at home. Impressed with their win at Utah last week. And keep in mind, they're undefeated in the Big 12 because that Kansas State game was a non-conference game.
So, Phil, here we go with West Virginia heading to Stillwater. And what a fascinating matchup for a host of reasons. You've got a West Virginia team sitting there at 2-2 with an opportunity against a brand in the Big 12 that's kind of had their way with the Mountaineers. I mean, Mike Gundy has really had his way with West Virginia, and wins against that guy have been very tough to come by since we joined the league in 2012 under any circumstances. The last two wins we have are actually in Stillwater against the Cowboys. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State, the big story in the offseason was Oli Gordon, and they haven't really managed to get him uncorked. He's struggled. His numbers have been down. What's fascinating to me, I found a metric this week against loaded boxes of 7 or more defenders, Phil. Last year, Ollie Gordon, 5.5 yards per carry. This year, against those same loaded boxes, 2.7 per carry. They've struggled to stop teams. You've got a pretty chunky number with the over-under. The line is now down to Oklahoma State -3, but good luck telling West Virginia fans that Ollie Gordon is struggling after watching him go for 282 in Morgantown last year, half of which was in the fourth quarter. What do you see playing out in what appears to be a fascinating matchup? Grab your popcorn for this one in Stillwater.
Yeah, I haven't been blown away with Oklahoma State in any game this year. You go back to the Arkansas game. Arkansas could have led that thing 28-0 in the first half. They completely dominated. They had a 351 to 77-yard edge. The key was a defensive touchdown, about 77 yards, which really turned that game around, kept Oklahoma State in the game, and then Oklahoma State was able to come back and win in overtime. You look at the Utah game, they trailed 22-3 with 5 minutes to go in the game, scored a couple of garbage touchdowns. And then Kansas State last week, I had a huge play on Kansas State, and I actually shut the volume off on the game at the start of the fourth quarter. That thing was done. It was Kansas State had won it. It was 42-13. And once again, Oklahoma State scored a late score. So I thought UCF showed the way to beat Oklahoma State last year when UCF just shut down Oli Gordon, and they beat him 45-3 at home. And we've seen that this year. I think West Virginia comes in with that same mentality. We need to stop Oli Gordon, because I don't know if Allan Bowman is the type of quarterback that could beat him. And I do think that you're going to see West Virginia be able to run the football, because Oklahoma State this year allowing 204 yards per game on the ground, 5.3 yards per carry. And if West Virginia can run the football, that offense will be humming. So I like Garrett Green running it, C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White. I like West Virginia to go into Oklahoma State and pull the upset this week.
Bill, lastly, before we get you out of here, usually I leave you with a Big 12 or West Virginia question. I'm going to go with a Big 12 question this week. Just through this first month plus of the season, who has been the biggest surprise to you? I mean, for me, I think it's BYU. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But is there anybody else outside of BYU, or maybe is that your pick?
I would have to go with BYU. Being 5-0 and 2-0 in conference play, beating Kansas State and beating Baylor on the road. Those are two games I clearly thought they would lose. Now, just like last year, most of their wins, they were outgained in their games. Same thing this year. They've been outgained in both those games. And yet somehow at the end of the game, they're on the winning side of the scoreboard. So hats off to Kalani Sitake. He's doing a hell of a job. And, the thing is with teams that are surprise teams, when you get off to a 5-0 start, now those teams believe they're going to win as the game goes on. And that makes them very dangerous. So last year, I thought they were a fraud at the one point in the season because they had been grossly outgained in almost every game, and they had opened up 5-2, and then they got blown out down the stretch. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think this is a better BYU team than last year's BYU team.
Yeah, totally agree. They definitely could be a team that's going to be in the mix for the Big 12 title race, at least to get to Dallas for the championship game. So, Phil, we appreciate you coming back on for another week here, breaking down some games, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, a lot of fun as always, guys. And let's go Mountaineers this week, huh?
Yeah, let's get a big time W to come home for the Coal Rush against Iowa State next week at the 8 p.m. kickoff. That'll be a lot of fun. Phil Steele, make sure to check out his stuff and get all of his info on his website. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to make our picks for this weekend's game.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Great stuff as always from Phil Steele. As you heard him there say, the key to this one's going to be slowing down Oli Gordon and running the football with Jaheim White, C.J. Donaldson, Garrett Green and company, as we could all pretty much tell by the numbers, but until they go out and actually do it, that's going to be the chore. So we're going to move into our picks for this week's game, as we always do here on the ITG Sportsbook that Jed has created. You can place your wagers online at ITG. I'm just kidding. We'll maybe in a couple of years we'll get to that point. But first, another thank you to Johnston Equipment. Get 0% financing for up to 72 months with approved credit on select Coyote tractors in stock now at Johnston's Equipment, Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. Jed, what do you have for us this week?
Friends at Johnston Equipment. I'll be passing by there later today. So the Oli Gordon portion of this, I wanted to include an Oli Gordon prop in this, obviously. He's so central to the storyline. But I struggled with what to come up with in terms of a number or a category. So here's what we're going to do. Oli Gordon has not, his numbers have not been there this year compared to what they were last year when he had that record setting or that banner year last year. And we all remember what played out in Morgantown. Last year, Morgantown, 29 carries. He had 29 carries. So they fed him a lot for 282. Half of that came in the fourth quarter, and we got a little desperate to get the ball back. We started gambling on some run fits, and he popped all those big ones against us. So far this year, Sky, in the opener against South Dakota State, which I'm not going to sleep on that game. South Dakota State is a premier FCS team, so that was kind of an ill-advised game for them to even schedule. But they took care of business; they won handily. But Oli Gordon carried 28 times against South Dakota State. He hasn't approached that number again in any game since. His carries per game since then: 17 against Arkansas, 17 against Tulsa, 11 against Utah because they fell so far behind. And last week against K-State, same thing. They fell behind. They couldn't get him involved. 15. 17, 17, 11, 15 in the last four after 28 in the opener. Again, last year against West Virginia, 29 carries. I'm going to go with an over-under on his carries. And I'm going to go with, I can't make it as simple as putting it in a team. So I'm going to go 21 and a half.
I was thinking you were going to say 22 and a half. So golly. I'll lean a little bit under again, and it sounds crazy for me to even think this, just because I mean the success he had against them last year and the way that he can get going. But it feels like they really do want to throw the football, and I think their eyes are going to really open wide when they see West Virginia's tape, the secondary and their struggles so far this season. I think they're probably going to look at that matchup and really like their chances on taking shots downfield. And I know we saw some adjustments made in the Kansas game, which has a lot of people led to believe that maybe some things are fixed, but that was also against a team that doesn't really throw the ball a whole lot. So I think this is going to be another game where maybe Allan Bowman has 40, 45 plus pass attempts. It's going to be back and forth, high scoring game. So I'm going to lean under.
Yeah, they've thrown the football more than anybody in the country. And even on the road when they blew out Tulsa 45-10, he only had 17 carries for 41 yards in that one. 21.5 feels a little heavy. Um, I'm going to take the under slightly. And what I'm going to say when I take the under is I wouldn't be surprised at all if they try and find other creative ways to get him involved. He does have 12 catches.
Yeah.
It might be one of those games where instead of having a season high, he's had 3 multiple times. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 4 or 5 in this game as they just get creative and try and find different ways to get him the football. So we're both going to take the under on that one. Let's move on to prop number 2. This one's pretty simple. Allan Bowman gets the football out at a lightning pace, 2.31 seconds time to throw. He's among the top 5 in the country. He's hard to sack for that reason. Um, Now, his completion percentage takes a precipitous drop when you make him hold the football for more than 2.5. Wes and Owen and I talked about that in the preview, how his numbers suffer if you can hold up in coverage, even for that little bit of a beat that represents fractions of a second. But it's tough to
Yeah.
do. It's tough to get home on him. That's not to say you can't get close enough to impact plays, but it's tough to actually get home on a sack. He's only been sacked once in 197 dropbacks. Skylar, we're both on board with what is going on with this West Virginia front seven. We're averaging close to 15 pressures a game. I think we're kind of coming into our own as a pretty good pass rushing football team. So the question, quite simply, is: do we see sack number 2? Will West Virginia have a sack?
Oh, I will go yes. As I mentioned, I think they're going to drop back and throw it a bunch, and that obviously that doesn't really matter, I guess, to some extent because they've done that all year and only one sack. But I think anytime you have a good on good matchup, both sides are going to win at some point. And whether that's Bowman essentially stepping into a sack or West Virginia just finding a way to get home and beat their man one on one, I think we'll see at least one sack, maybe even a sack and a half. If I'm getting a little too greedy here, just let me know. But yeah, I think we get home at least once.
I'm going to say yes as well. This is boring so far. I think he's going to put it up enough that we're going to have maybe a TJ Jackson wiggle free through a gap. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're going to throw the football a lot. Even though I'm so curious to see, I do think they circled the wagons this week in their staff meetings early in the week and really scrutinized everything they've been doing and say, hey, what do we scrap? What do we change? What do we do differently? What do we reinvent? Because Mike Gundy's not afraid to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's more committed coming into this week than ever, going old school and running the football more than they have, as opposed to using the pass to set it up. But I don't know. I just think that the nature of what they do is they play a lot of pitch and catch. It's a lot of pitch and catch is even attached to their run game and the RPO side of
Right.
it. They have, passing game answers tied to the run game. So it's hard for them not to throw. And the other thing I look at is they're a heavy RPO team. And one of the liabilities against the RPO is what? When you're running a run pass option, you know what the O line's doing? They're run blocking.
Exactly.
They're not pass blocking. So that's leaving the quarterback, even for that fleeting second, unprotected. I think we can get one. And then finally, let's go to question number 3 with our prop. West Virginia is 14th in the Big 12 in total defense. We're giving up 410 a game defensively. Oklahoma State's dead last in the Big 12 defensively. They're giving up 463 a game. So I kind of combine those two, and I'm going to go with an over-under on total yards for these two offenses against these two defenses. Over-under combined total yards, 873 and a half.
Carry the one. No, I'll go. I'll
Get your
go
toes
on.
out.
Yeah, I'll go under. I do think there's going to be a lot of offense. I think there's going to be a bunch of points scored. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see some short fields in this game. West Virginia's defense hasn't really forced a lot of turnovers, but Allan Bowman has been a quarterback that has put the ball in danger a lot over the last year and a half. And West Virginia's even kind of turned it over a little bit. So I think you're going to see some short fields. Maybe the return game gets involved a little bit too. I just I don't know. That's a lot of yards to rack up. So I'll go under, but I do think it's going to be a back and forth game.
Yeah, that takes 437 each.
Yeah.
And you talked about it. We discussed this in the preview. Since the beginning of last year, Allan Bowman, 30 turnover-worthy plays, the most in the
That's
Big
a
12.
lot.
Well, to make it interesting, I'll go ahead and take the over. Why not? We have to differentiate ourselves on something here, so I'll go the other way on that. But yeah, that's a chunky number, 873.5. That's
I wouldn't be
an
shocked.
average of 437 between both. But that's a lot of offense. But yeah, like I said, make it interesting. I'll take the over. So there we go for this week's props.
There you have it. So that's going to do it for this week's episodes of In the Gun. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page. Give us a follow on our X account at In the Gun. And also, we have our weekly pick'ems if you want to participate. Very easy. It's pinned on our Twitter account. You can go in there, make your picks, try and beat us, and see how you do. I think last week we had a couple of people at 1-2 or got 2 of the 4 correct. Is that right, Jed?
Yeah.
So we're starting to
Which
get a
is
little
pretty
bit
remarkable.
yeah. And my fellow Wheeling guy too, Brock. I think it's Brock Milko. Maybe even John Marshall alum, if I'm not mistaken. So hats off to him. So that'll do it for this week. And as always, be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast, In the Gun. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week to recap West Virginia and Oklahoma State.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
Tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.